Into the studio today, it's Mr. Ben Balderson, my favorite heathen. And if he can unmute himself, we can start to have a little bit of conversation. What's going on, brother?
Oh, living life on to exciting new adventures for the year. It's a crazy year this year so far. After Flattoberfest, which was a insane adventure where we got hit with Hurricane Helene. I ended up being gone and then I ended up getting stuck in Wyoming because my truck broke down, and it's a specialty part, and they took them weeks to figure this out, and then weeks to get just like craziness. So I was gone for almost a month and a half, and then I get home and it's already, as you can see,
Yes,
my breaths and
yes.
and my wood burner's been going for 2 hours at least. I mean, going well.
So how long would it take to get that thing really up to speed where the hoary frost of winter is not being emitted from your mouth?
It takes it usually by about 11. It's pretty good. Pretty good. So about another hour. Usually it's pretty. The biggest issue is it's a cast iron stove, and it's a really thick cast iron stove. So it takes a long time for that heat to transfer through it. And then once it does, it's a real nice radiant heat for the rest of the time. But getting it there, and we don't put wood in overnight. My wife and I, we actually sleep with the upstairs windows open, and we sleep basically whatever the outside temperature is. That's what we're sleeping in.
Wow. Well, that, there could be some salutary effects for sleeping like that, I'm sure. Especially if you bundle up and use your radiant heat with one another, it's even more interesting. Doesn't it feel like pre-COVID dealing with parts and trucks and issues like that were just a whole lot easier?
Oh, I wow. The leaps and bounds as somebody who does his own most of his own work. I have 2 different mechanics degrees. I'm an electrician. I know how to do plumbing. I know how to weld, all of that. The small things that you can't get a hold of, and the different vehicle parts that they've quit making. Brian's truck, he's got a truck that it's not that old. It's just a 90s truck. There's parts on it that they just don't even make anymore.
They don't even make them anymore. Yep.
Yeah, nobody makes it. And so we're actually, Brian and I are at this point where we're talking about getting a CNC machine and maybe a 3D printer. And because we have to be able to make our own parts, I already got a whole toolkit. One of the biggest problems that we have out here, because we have wood rats, is that they apparently rats really enjoy wiring. It's very
they love it. They will get in there. Yeah, they'll fuck with it.
Yeah, and so these harnesses are horrifyingly expensive and really hard to get. And so hell yes. Glad I'm not in Dakota today, though. It's cold enough here. Holy smoke. But these harnesses are hard to get, and some of the vehicles, they don't even make them anymore. So I got this whole toolkit so I can remake all these harnesses, and because the wires what's used is bad, so you just replace the pin connectors. Well, you got to have the tool to get those pin connectors out.
Look at that.
See, I can believe that for sure. I can believe that for sure, because and the funny thing is they also have colors they prefer. When you, I've been doing rebuilding generators, because out here in the, at one point in time, Humboldt County here had more large off-grid generators than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
And because of the cannabis growers.
Growers, yeah.
Yeah. So the woods are littered with these generators, and as these guys were doing growing, if mice got in there or whatever, well, trying to find a mechanic to come out here was a huge deal. So they just go buy another one, throw it back there in the woods, this other one to just get chucked into the woods. So these things are everywhere back here. So Brian and I have been kind of working on building this business where we just take those things and rebuild them, and you get them for real cheap, and then it's a $10,000 generator. A lot of these 15,000 even. You get them running again, and as long as you can rebuild the parts on them instead of trying to find those harnesses and whatnot, then you're doing real good. So I think that's you see this in third world countries is what's funny. We're really turning into a third world country.
You know what? I was just going to say, it reminds me of Cuba, right?
Yeah.
Where they have all these old Chevys and you can't get the parts, and these guys figure out how to make the parts so they can keep these Chevys alive. I was going to use that exact correlation to what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's it. We really are turning to that point. But honestly, that was to be expected. So one of the things, I'm sure that this is a hot button issue that you've talked about a little bit, is these, hey, I'm on a show, is these tariffs. So you and I are old enough and have enough memory to remember pre-NAFTA and what NAFTA did to our country. And when you don't manufacture,
fuck it all up.
Yeah, it gave away all of our blue collar jobs.
That's right.
And the middle class jobs.
You know, the first area to get hit by NAFTA was Detroit.
Yeah.
Right. And then they started to move automobile manufacturing to Mexico, right? And that once that happened, it was a trickle down effect, because you have all these OEM people who are also making parts, right? And then what happens to them? They have to outsource as well. So NAFTA really hit us hard with transportation. And you're right, man. It totally, not only that, but it really fucked it up for the people of Mexico as well. Because there were people, and I actually told this story last night over Thanksgiving dinner. My neighbor in Albany, California, was from Mexico, and he had a ranch in Mexico. And NAFTA hits, and they raised the price of everything deliberately. So these people in Mexico had to sell their land. And who came in and bought their land? It was the multinational corporations. And so it fucked them up too. And it really retarded like their economic growth, right? You think, well, it's better for Mexico, but it wasn't better for Mexico. So it screwed everybody all the way around.
Yeah, and obviously you were one of the old enough to remember Ross Perot basically like a freaking prophet saying all these things were going to happen, and he was basically the last guy they ever let on the main stage that wasn't in the team red or team blue. Like they're like, okay, that can't happen again. That guy.
Well, Ron Paul gave it a valiant effort in 2008. But they just did not give him any screen time whatsoever.
None.
Yeah.
None. So against their own policies, even though he met all the check marks.
100%. And now you got all these guys that were antagonistic towards Ron Paul cozying up to him, right? Like Tucker Carlson dumped on Ron Paul during that time. And Tucker even apologized to Ron Paul just recently, that he said, look, I was wrong. You know, at least he had the humility to apologize towards him. But you know, he's got shat on during that time. So you know, Ross Perot said, you hear that sucking sound? That's all the jobs going to Mexico, which is what he said. And prior to that, this country, even though we had to deal with absolutely insane interest rates during the 70s under the Carter administration, we were still a viable country that produced things. And now invest in your 3D printers, like, because you're going to be responsible for, if you're in a situation like you, or even in maybe not up in the wilds of Jefferson County, you're probably going to need one anyway.
A real easy situation I can point out is I live in the forest in Northern California, famous for having huge wildfires at this point. Gavin Newsom, in his infinite wisdom, because they don't like it when the brown people come around and maintain their yards, that their equipment's very loud and noisy and throws off smoke. They don't like that. So, you know, the noisy brown people, hey, stop. And so, cat messing with wires over here, trying to cause this all to go bad.
He says, fuck the rats. I'll show you what I can do.
So Gavin Newsom, in his infinite wisdom, bans two-stroke motors, which is what most runs off of.
Yep.
Including beasts like this. Now, that awesome little cool electric saw that they got with the that'll run a 20-inch blade.
That's a piece of shit.
That thing's great for doing lemon, but when you have trees that are 8 feet across at the center, 10 feet across at the center, they don't make an electric saw. You'd have to wear a Ghostbusters backpack to try and just power the saw to try and deal with that.
The lifespan of those electric saws, by the way, they're so limited.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
Thank you, baby.
That's service. Look at
that. I have a good wife. She is most excellent. But you get they don't make anything that will do the job. So now in an area like myself, these steel saws, like during the COVIDs, the steel shop went over a year without a saw in the store because they couldn't get them.
Right.
They couldn't get a steel saw. Well, now these small parts are still hard to get. Like, you have to go to eBay and get used parts and junkyard parts for a lot of things. Because when they came back at a smaller scale, and these big corporations don't make all their own parts. They outsource most of the parts and then get those parts made. And a lot of these companies weren't big enough to to come back right away. So some of these parts just didn't exist. And so this is a steel saw. This is something I live by every day. I have three of them, all larger than most people even know that you can get a steel saw. And then this guy outlaws it. So those parts are definitely about to become obsolete.
Ugh. So yeah, man, invest in the 3D printer and you got to go full Cubano now, right? That's where it's at.
Yeah. And you got to learn how to be creative like those third world country folks that will take and remelt metals and reforge parts and things like that. You've got to learn how to do that. So you have a CNC machine, a lathe, a forge, a 3D printer, and you can make just about anything. At that point in time, you can at home build your own car. You just need enough metal. And I promise you, we've been a wasteful enough society that kind of stuff is everywhere, laying all over.
You just have to get access to it and then figure out how you're going to recondition it or repurpose it. And that's the thing about Americans, though, Ben, that I think is an underrated quality that we have, is that we're very resilient and we're very creative and we're very innovative. And, if there's a challenge, there are people that are going to figure out a way to figure it out. And this is, I think, truly a very American kind of trait. What are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree. And I think that spirit of the American has been suppressed so heavily, and I think now we're seeing a movement back toward that. We're seeing heavy movements toward homeschooling. We're seeing heavy movements toward off-gridding, not usually to the level that I am, but to a much more disconnected degree than being a complete just lackey of the system.
You're
a lot of these people, you can, you know, you're going to be disheartened for a little bit. That's just the way life is. You know, you got sold on a program and found out that it was a lie. And we bounced back. Like you said, there was going to be a little grieving time. And now because since Roosevelt, we got the American dream, corporate dream got sold in a very heavy fashion. And exactly one generation got to enjoy it, right? And the rest of us are all paying the bill on that. And so while we became disenfranchised, like you said, I think that this is a good thing, because you saw, like in this last election, myself, I'm not for either political party. But what I saw also was a movement where the social shaming and the nonsense that were being run by the crazies.
Yeah.
Finally, the Americans have had enough of that, and they finally stood up and said, "No more. We're not letting this happen." And so, I do think that we are making a good move as far as that.
You know, so I wanted to bring this up with you because, you know, I hang out on Twitter Spaces a lot, and I get a lot of black pill content, and you know, there are people like this guy, High Impact Flicks, even Whitney Webb to some extent, and they're really into these, you know, kind of told you so moments, like I told you so, I told you so. Like, that doesn't really do anybody any good. But my feeling is that, and I put this into that guy, High Impact Flicks' one of his comments. I said, you're here trying to shame Trump supporters, right? This is what you're trying to do. I said, the people who really voted for Trump and believed in Trump aren't even fucking on Twitter. Okay.
Yeah.
They don't have time for Twitter. They run businesses, right? They have like maybe 2 jobs. Like, they could give 2 shits about your Trump shaming and his appointees. Right? They voted for the guy because they thought, between these 2, this guy gives me the best shot that I can have to keep my business. Now, whether that's true or not, we'll find out, right? But it blows my mind. It's like they're just like shooting fish in a barrel in an echo chamber. But if they really sat across from one of these guys, like, you know, from the Rust Belt, like somebody from Pittsburgh or upstate New York or, you know, Ohio, and tried to Trump shame them, they'd leave with with teeth falling out of their mouth. Right. And I really feel like in some ways, you know, we have to remember that, like, these are the people that really voted for him, not the people that, you know, are, you know, going to sit there and go, yeah, he fucked up. He hired another Zionist. Yeah, you're right. I voted for the one. They're not there. They're just not there. And these people don't understand that. So I just feel like, you know, what we're dealing with in a lot of ways is this interesting place to be, where we're both critical, right? And we understand what's happening. But at the same time, we also have to have some compassion and empathy for the people that are being, you know, derided for, you know, placing a vote or making that check. Because, you know, what else did they have, right? And they may watch Fox News, or, you know, they may watch, I don't know, Matt Walsh or somebody like that. But that's the extent of it. And I feel like, you know, black pilling people and saying, I told you so, isn't really the best strategy. You know, we got to find some common ground here.
Yeah, I know. It's some ridiculous stuff. It really proves where a lot of these people are, just period, with where they're trying to be at. And that's part of why there's so much stretching for trying to find a new thing, so that can be the big thing that they were right about. And so you see some real ridiculous things getting bandied about right now. But, and I'm going to sound a little bit arrogant here, I've given lectures for years now. And like, especially with lab alchemy, even people that get it at levels. And
right.
You know this because when you go back and you associate with people, or they come back and tell you what they're thinking, it doesn't match what you're talking about, but they got something. They got something. So you don't go, oh, you piece of shit. You're just too stupid to get it. You didn't even understand. You don't jump, like, okay, well, you got something. And then you re-explain it again. And you understand that a person typically has to hear something at least 3 times before it really starts seeping in and starts working its way around in their brain. And that a lot. And then even then, like in my family, when I talk to my mom, I'll explain something to my mom, and I'll do it a number of times, and then I won't talk to her about it for like a year, and she'll come back at me and she'll explain it to me like it was she's telling me, not she's like, she's come up with this, it's her idea, she's telling me now. And which again is fine. okay you had to,
at least she gets it though, right? She gets it, right?
Exactly. That's the idea. She got it. So to pretend, and the thing is I'm learning new things fairly consistently in my life. It's just because I'm doing new things fairly consistently. So guess what? I fuck up things fairly consistently. I do. And people around here get to laugh at me. Plus I still do normal things like actual work. So like last week, I was limped up for a day because I was pulling out a hay bale and I slipped out in the wet, slippery driveway because it's been raining like mad here. And we didn't have the driveway cleaned off because it doesn't normally start raining hard until end of December. And I had started cleaning the driveway, so I had a nice pile of shit made just for me to face plant in. Right. Yeah, with a bale on top of me. Drove it in nicely.
That'll keep you humble, right?
Yeah. So to sit there and do all that, I don't know. I don't think it's productive. And when you sit there and stand on laurels, then that's when you end up being behind really quick, because you find out that everybody else has moved past you. Once that thing, they aren't going to sit there and rub it in. They're going to sit there and listen to that, do that. They'll all just move past you. And you just end up looking like a jerk. So I ended up pulling out of the community for the most part myself because of a lot of that. And then it's a super interesting thing. And I know that you have insights on this because of the astrology, especially with Pluto coming in. But I watched a polarization happen where the people that I was actually speaking to did good. And a lot of them barely come into the community. They'll listen to a show and they barely talk. They moved off grid. They did things. And then you have the ones that wanted to do the whole guru thing, and they started rabidly going after the craziest gurus. You've got the archaics types and the guys like that. And those are the only people really hard catching traction. And you're like, wow, that's insane. And so
when you say going after them, what do you mean? Like, just like personally, like going after Jason? I know we've discussed Jason before in the show, but like, you think that he became a target for all these other people who were self-styled gurus, or what's your takeaway from that?
I think it's crazy to follow the guy.
Yeah, well, you and I are on the same page.
I don't understand how that happened.
I've had this discussion with Emily quite a bit, who's in chat right now, and I tend to agree with Emily on this. Like, take Jason out of the equation. We're not even just going to just take him out of the equation, right? It's the thing. It's like the blob that's sort of aggregated around him, right? That's
the thing I'm talking about.
Exactly.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I watched that happen, with so many people, and it's so weird. And I'm like, what is going on? And then I started seeing really bad stuff get floated about, like the whole jets can run without fuel, and that, like, when you're attacking, like, to get that one by, you've got to get to down to some blue collar dirty ass. I'm actually, one of my mechanics degrees was, I was a turbine mechanic and diesel mechanic in the Army. Like, so I'm just a grubby mechanic who does face plants and shit. I'm not somebody in the paid off group of privileged people, and turbines don't run off air. The whole air thing is literally that turbines have so much torque that to get them to turn over with a battery, especially like in an aircraft or in a tank or something that's small, the battery bank would be huge and horribly heavy to try and turn that turbine over to get it started before the combustion kicks in. And so the air gets it turning. So there's a little tank, there's a tank that holds compressed air that pushes that and turns it to get it, because a combustion engine, you've got to get it turning.
Which is conveniently left out of the description of planes fly without fuel, right? Like, they didn't really talk about that.
Yeah, so I you know, when all that kind of stuff started getting bandied about, I was like, you know what? I'm going back to the lab. I'm doing my own thing again. I actually recently started a debate channel that's more down to earth type subjects, debating more, you know, relevant things about how people are living their lives and the daily issues they're dealing with and whatnot.
Yeah, that's what it really comes down to. You know, and getting back to this, you know, kind of whole black pill effort, the thing that it also bugs me is that now you have like this priest class who believes that they have all the answers, right? Like, they don't have all the solutions, but they have all the answers. And everybody that's outside of that is either a Trump tard or a moron or, you know, ill-informed. And again, it feels to me like it sets up this really weird dichotomy. And they don't have all the answers. And particularly bringing it back to this Pluto in Aquarius piece, that there are things that are going to happen that are really off script here, right? And just, you know, even the best laid plans will, you know, wind up, you know, going to shit or fuck up. And I'd love your take on this, because you spend a lot of time in nature and you observe the natural world. And there are things that you see in the natural world all the time, I'm sure, that like kind of go beyond your expectations, and you say, how did this happen? Right? Like there's a lot of novelty in nature. And I wonder if you can speak to that.
Dude, there is not a single day on the farm that Brian and I, because we're the ones always outside, we don't go, how the hell does that even happen? Like,
yeah, right.
All the time. Yeah.
So I mean, we don't live in a static universe, and the polarization has put us into static corners, and we have to break out of that.
Absolutely. And in order to do that, one of the big things, one of the things that's giving me some hope is Team Red. If you want to be on Team Red, you've got to be down with the small hats. Yeah. You've got to be down. And so
although that's starting to break a little bit.
That's what I'm saying. That's what's giving me hope. Is that Israel has pushed and played its hand so hard and so crazy that nobody can deny it. And so this crazed push for the small hats, I'm actually seeing a lot of kickback on that.
Dude, I'm seeing so much inversion with this. It's crazy, right? Just everything. So I don't know if you saw this last week, but AIPAC sent out the talking points on Netanyahu and the ICC, and everybody, Tom Cotton, Mike Pompeo, everybody, John Kennedy from Louisiana, to a T, all had those talking points in their Twitter feed. They denounced the ICC. And if you went through their tweet, 99.9% of the people were telling them to fuck off. Right. I went through those feeds and looked at them. Right. So this is exactly what we're talking about here.
I think what really, the funny thing is our community also went through this, but everything's happening so hyper fast now. Where when you saw the media shift in the year that Hillary and Trump ran against each other. The big thing that was the wild card was the internet. That enough people had suddenly gotten their media from the internet rather than mainstream sources, that it was too much of a wild card and it shifted everything for them. And so, but I think this has happened again to the norm. So eventually, obviously, a more normative media setup in the alternative also. Well, now that's breaking up again, and it's moved out again, and it's so diversified at this point because it's, are you on Rumble? Are you on Twitch? Are you on Odyssey? Are you on Rockfin? Are you on, like, which one are you on? And everybody's got one platform or two platforms that they might be very well known in, and then the rest they aren't well known in. So you don't get these overwhelmingly large talking heads all at once. So it's super interesting to watch the way that this is broken down and gotten away from them.
And divided. It's like a cell that just keeps dividing.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. I could totally see that. Yeah.
Yeah. And because of that, the narrative's gotten away from them. So the talking heads are getting this information, but all the people that where everybody else has decided to split off and get their information from 100 different places, none of those people got that information. So you're seeing where, like you said, I'm seeing a lot of pushback against that. Like the propaganda that they're trying to put out right now is just amazing. Like they are countering this. They realize how hard that the Team Red, the people might have went with Team Red, but as Team Red plays their old games of BS where it was never any good for the people, because that was always the big thing with them. You've got to, if you're going to take Team Blue, you've got to buy the extreme lib nonsense. If you're going to go with Team Red, you've got to buy the small hat nonsense.
Right.
And you can see so much pushback. It's like people are getting ready to break the system on that, and it's rather encouraging.
Right, and then you're going to get people. This is the thing that they game all this shit out, right? Like they have all these computer models and they just run this stuff all the time. Yeah, and so they're probably looking at, okay, well, we're going to get X amount of people from the so-called left who are anti-Israel and pro-Gaza, right? And then we're going to have these people on the right who we think have invested in, the end times fairy tale, but we'll also get some more kind of disaffected sort of libertarian or truthers from that zone as well. And then we have this sort of Pisces vesica in the middle. I don't think that they have fully comprehended like the metastasization that's going to happen on the right side. Like I think that they just think that, we're just going to continue to, run the Christian program and continue to promote Israel as this, spiritual sanctuary that everybody has to fucking buy into. I just don't think it's working, and it's gonna blow up in their face, right? And it is. It is. And I was on with Giuseppe and Dave and Russ the other day. And Russ brought this video up. It's really interesting. And it was, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it was this guy and he was on a Zoom call, and he was a tiny hat, and he was talking to these other people, and he said, "Well, we really now have to pay very close attention to what's happening at a local level. Like we have to track people at the city council and at the school board." And it's like, well, first of all, they've been doing that forever anyway, right? But just by that Zoom video coming out, it's like letting the cat out of the bag. Come on, hello,
Yeah.
right? Pay attention, right?
For anybody that happened to miss the abuse of the letter agency Senate hearings, where they flat admitted that they were using government spy agencies to monitor parents who were objecting to the school programs that were trying to get pushed through, especially the DEI type things, the transsexual type things. All those things they have in the books in libraries where it had it been heterosexual type information, most parents still would have objected to, like, why are you giving my kid open access to basically sex books? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. And they were targeting, Merrick Garland was sending people out and targeting parents at these school board meetings. So he's a tiny hat, but he's a tiny hat from, the bullshit left, right? Like that's the camp that they hang out in, right? Versus the hardcore Zio right, the two polarities within that system. But
they own both sides. That's the funny part.
That's it.
Everybody doesn't want to realize that they're going to win because they own both sides and they own all the media. But that's again is what's messing them up. Is everything's fractured the way it did. So they've got to get control of the internets now if they want to try and get an iron grip back on this. Or else they're going to lose control.
Right. So do you think a situation, because I've often thought of this, that a situation would occur where the internet goes down, and then when it comes back up, we got an internet 3.0, and then the digital ID comes in, and they know what, it's like, if you're going to participate in this world, you have to prove who you are, right? That's one way that they can take control of the internet. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Although I think, so what, it's so hard because it's, it's no different than the anti-theft world. For every anti-theft device that gets made, a thief figures out how to get by that bugger. It's just how it is.
That gets back to being a human, and we're an American in some ways, but even a human, like humans hack shit. This is what we do. Exactly.
We evolve, micro evolve, not macro evolve, but micro evolve.
We micro evolve. Yeah.
So we adapt. When you look at it, when you look at the way this has went down, the wars went down, especially the one that's affected us, because it obviously didn't affect us when this was more of a mainstream thing, and when the people moved to the alternative media. Now, from the alternative media on, the first wave of people that got taken away, the people that like the Freeman Fly losing his channel, basically being the first big streaming channel on YouTube, and his goes down, and then he can't ever get his back, and guys like Crow going down.
I went down for 4 months in 2020. They took my channel away. I got it back though, because I figured out how to get it back. What they did is they doxed me for content on one of my channels. I said, look, I got 2 channels. You got to give me one of my channels back. And they did. They gave me back this channel because it had nothing to do with that content for the other channel. But I was down for 4 months leading up to the election.
Nice. Yeah, Freeman went down, I think 2018 even. They were starting to prepare it, and they were taking down the big alternative guys. Crow went down, and when he came back, he had no subs. And then they took him down again, and he came back, and they had no subs, and they let him come back, but they would take away all of his subs. And I think in that first generation, what that did was kind of martyred people.
Yeah.
And so what that did was then when guys like Freeman and Crow went and started their own stations, it now took them people out of their control and pushed them to those stations. And because of the martyring of, look, I'm being censored, they won't even let me on the alternative YouTubes and stuff, that pushed and caused part of this fracturing, so that this really was a problem for them. The only two routes that they're taking, going to be able to take now is either let some super guru type that's going to lead them back like a sheepdog. But that's super hard now because it's so fractured that people now,
right.
they have 153 choices and they don't want one choice again.
Right.
Yeah. You know, like you like if you tried to start a YouTube channel 8 years ago, getting up to 1,000 subs overnight almost.
Yeah.
You know, super easy. You try to get 1,000 subs now, good luck. It's just how it is. Even if you've got to be a super well-known figure, and even then you start seeing how small these circles are. Even the big political figures, you start seeing how small all these circles are. It's extremely interesting, which understanding that takes into proves your huge point that most of those people, the voter population, they're not even active talking in Twitters, talking.
No, they're not. They don't have time for it.
They're working at home.
Yeah, exactly. So Jason Whitlock, who is a former sports writer, and he's been on YouTube and he goes through Blaze Media, Glenn Beck's site. And Jason's an interesting character because sometimes he'll go into the tiny hat world, right? But he really takes on issues like race and sex and gender, and he's definitely, on the deep right. The other day he was on YouTube. He's saying, "Hey, look, YouTube has," and he's got a really big following, right? He says YouTube is now messing with our views. We have seen a plateau in subscriptions. We have seen our subscriber rate not only just plateau but fall off because YouTube will unsubscribe people. And so what is he doing? He says, you got to come over here and subscribe to this because this happens with everybody on YouTube, not named Tim fucking Pool, right? They will throttle you, and it's. How do you feel about Rumble? Do you have any sense as to where Rumble's going?
I am the worst person to ask about any of these things. The absolute worst. I'm the technology type thing. I'm really bad at. And then these things are changing so fast. And like, let's say like right now, I've got to spend the next couple weeks trying to catch up on wood because during my normal wood cutting season, it was raining like hell. So I got to try and go out and catch up on wood. And then Brian and I can't seem to keep vehicles from not breaking right now. It's just horrible. Which sidetracks me into
again, bringing it back to you. You got real world shit to deal with.
Yeah. So trying to keep up with news, the things that I'm interested in, like organic chemistry, things like that. Trying to again, I started a debate show called Deliberating Dog-Faced Dudes, and trying to keep up with things that are going to be interesting in that. I can't keep up with the tech, and they keep coming out with new ones like every day. And it's not just United States that's competing, it's other countries. So there's a lot of people that do like the Chinese chats and things like that. And I can't keep up with all of that. And then, like I said, it's so fractured anyways, that if you actually want to gain traction, you have to be across all of them. So now I've got to be interested in eight or 10 apps or something and figure out how to run all of them. And,
I don't know. It's like, how many people actually go onto Odyssey?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. It's like, is it worth it?
I don't know.
Is it worth it for me to stream on Twitch? Like, I don't know. The reason I asked about Rumble is because I've been doing a lot more stuff on Rumble, And I've noticed, again, I'm just trying to understand the algorithm, right? I've noticed that when I do anything that's Trump related on Rumble, my views go up. And I don't know why that is. Is it because more people are interested in Trump, or is it something that Rumble pushes? Because
Right.
there's Trump in the title or Trump in the thumbnail. So what does that do? It's sort of like, it's very, kind of black boxy, right? It's like, oh, well, if I want more views, I'll do more Trump stuff, right? Because that's how it works. You kind of chase the dragon. And and it's like, well, that's really kind of intellectually dishonest, actually.
I was literally just talking about this with Beth Martins, and it's hilarious because it's like you're seeing that a lot right now, because 2020 we had this weird event where Americans got locked down in their houses, and we're normally a very free traveling society. For as much as worldly people try to pretend like Americans are like very isolated, yeah, we're isolated because our country is ginormous. So every state in our country is pretty much the size of most countries.
That's right. That's right. You could go through a couple states and you've gone through Europe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that, like, just this last year when I went to Flatoberfest and back, it was in South Carolina. We traveled like 6,000 miles and never left the United States, and we're in different places all the time. So that's, we can isolate like that because we're a ginormous country.
Yeah.
And we can have vastly different, and this is one of the problems with trying to. One thing I think needs to be a talking point for the Team Red at some point. Because Team Blue doesn't seem to understand this, that we're the United States of America. And I think we're too large. And the entire Electoral College was to make sure that individual states didn't get drowned out, that each state still had a voice in the voting process. The federal government was never supposed to be so big and powerful as it is, because it can't represent everybody. Even in California, the whole reason that California wants to do the whole Jeffersonia thing, where Northern California, everything north of Sacramento, breaks off from Southern California and makes a different state, is because California in and of itself is too large and diverse to be represented at all. The whole Northern California is extremely conservative. They're farmers, they're ranchers, they're woodcutters, things like that. And you get 6 votes. The Bay gets, everything from the Bay and LA and all that get like 86 votes. Well, we lose every single time on every single thing, including like they pass things on us. Like they decided that people that put on more miles need to pay a higher level of insurance because they're down there in the city and everywhere they go is within 2 minutes. Well, so now all of a sudden we're paying extra to keep their insurance lower, even though we make less and everything else. And it's just nonsense. And of course they voted it in. They had 86 votes saying yes and 6 saying no. And the California Senate looks like that consistently.
Well, people who are not familiar with California, once you start to get to like Livermore in the Bay Area, you just go a little east, like you're in a different world. Like you're in the Central Valley, and the Central Valley tends to be fairly conservative, even though there are a lot of, migrant workers there, right? Like if you go to LA, you start headed east, and you run into like Corona and Fontana. Again, you're in very like traditionally conservative territory. So you have these pockets. I'll tell you what they did. And this was a major like sea change for California. They flipped San Diego in San Diego County. That was huge because for a long time, San Diego County was decidedly Republican. You had all the bases down there, right? You had the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, Miramar, all that shit. They managed to flip San Diego to go team blue. And San Diego, like, Pete Wilson was the mayor of San Diego, Republican piece of shit governor, but he was still a Republican nonetheless, right? So San Diego was one of those things that kind of counterbalanced LA and San Francisco. But once they flipped San Diego, then man, didn't really matter. But you get out of those pockets, you go to the east and to the north, and it's like it's a totally different fucking country.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Even in California, to try to actually represent these things, it's impossible. Like it's too large, too overwhelming. And to try and do that over a vast country, you've got look at the terms that coastal people use for the entire Midwest. They're the flyover states. Right. They don't care about what those people want or need at all. And those people live a different life. One of the big ones that I like using, because I like to try to at least look at another person's perspective. Yeah. So on the gun control, I can at least understand where people from big cities are coming from. Everybody they know, if they've ever shot a rifle, it was to go out and shoot a deer, and they went and sat in a tree stand for a few days and paid some money somewhere and hauled it out and whatnot. To them, the only other reason to own one would be to shoot a human being. I live out in the country. Regularly, bears, mountain lions, bobcats, raccoons, all those kind of things come roaming into my yard, and bears, especially if they've just had a cub, can be quite aggressive. Now, like the one that we have around here that's been like, we've literally just in the last couple months had a bear he stole a bag of dog food out the back of my Suburban. He dug through all of our trash. He hasn't bothered anything alive, so we haven't shot it. Sometimes they're pretty all right. Sometimes they're not. I had a war with bobcats for quite some time where they were killing all my birds. It was horrible.
Well, I would say to your point, the flip side of the urban experience is that, dude, you got feral humans there too, right? Like, in as much as there's gun violence in those areas where people will use those guns amongst themselves, right? There's a large preponderance of that feral activity kind of moving out and having to defend oneself. This is an interesting point now too. I'm going to bring this up. I want your thoughts on this. So now you have the inner city communities, right, where a lot of this gun violence is taking place. And now they're having to deal with Tren de Aragua, right, and all these other gangs coming up from South America and them imposing their will, right, and their weaponry into, their backyards. And now all of a sudden you got these inner city people. They're like, holy shit, instead of pointing our guns at each other, there's somebody else here, right? There's a new apex predator in the neighborhood. And that's going to change the equation as well. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
That absolutely is insane. And what's really driving some of that is, and this has been extremely mystifying to me, if you're really out of line crazy, liberals will stand up for you, to the point where, like, I live in Northern California, so like the people in any of the larger cities are pretty much all very liberal. In town, the large town where I live, there's a guy who gets all fentanyled out and will wander out into traffic swinging an axe, and they're like, oh yeah, just swerve around him, you got to watch out for him. Like, the guy swinging an axe at cars, we gotta just make sure he's okay. Don't swear. Like,
he's just a traffic cone. Don't mind him. He's just a traffic cone.
Yeah, and it's absolutely insane. So then you see the same out of it's that whole saying where the point isn't to give them the truth or give them the make them believe the lie, but to muddle everything so much you can't tell. And this whole thing with the gangs, you got the Team Blue saying, "Oh, it's not even happening. No, this isn't even happening."
Well, that's right. They won't even acknowledge it.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And again, this is no different than dude down at the thing. They treat that dude like a traffic cone that it's your responsibility now. The onus of responsibility is on you to make sure the guy wandering around in the street, cracked out of his mind on fentanyl, swinging an axe, that you got to stay away from him.
Yeah. Allow him to be authentic.
Yes.
He's just being authentic. That's all.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you're going, wow. And so, of course, as soon as something like this happens, just like when we've seen in the trans community, you start seeing like apex predators start taking advantage of the system and using it to their advantage. Of course, that's going to happen in every single way. And if these people are not willing to fight back, the out in my yard, I'm a vegetarian, so I don't keep the roosters in the hen house, but I don't, kill the roosters either. So there's times I'll have like 30 roosters roaming around. It just depends on how active the raccoons are and how good a shot I am. Right. But I'll have up to 30 roosters roaming around, and the smallest little guy, as long as he stands up for himself, the biggest rooster won't even piss with him. It's the ones that won't, the ones who act like prey. And you see those ones, you'll see them. They like all the time. Those ones, all of a sudden predators want a piece. Even the mountain lions, if you turn around and scream at it, they run away quick. They're like, oh no, he wants a fight. This is why, like, occasionally you see videos of people getting attacked because they roll by on a bike. It's that running away, that prey maneuver where you're scared, you're running away, and they get to be predator. That kicks off a whole predator thing. A lot of people have seen that with their dogs. A dog can look at a cat and everything's fine, but if that cat takes off running, that dog, good luck. Like, that dog's on it now, because you've now kicked off a predator prey instinct. And so even in mass humanity, if we as a society show ourselves as prey, predators are going to make their way in and start taking pieces. That's how it works.
Yeah. Well, I think you go back to COVID. We started off with COVID. We were talking about, the whole parts thing, right? And how everything pre-COVID in terms of manufacturing and supply chain was different. Like, COVID was also an exercise in submission, right? It was an exercise in submission and obedience. And so these are the things that you're talking about when it comes to displaying whether or not you're predator or prey. So through COVID, there were a lot of people that said, we're prey.
Most people. And in fact, it was super interesting. You can see that the ones that they're standing out in the news because of some of their actions, like South Dakota, like where I'm from, because I'm from South Dakota, and they refused. They're like, no, we're not masking up. It's not happening. This is stupid.
One of Kristi Noem's better moments, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, she's a complete sellout, and she's horrifying herself. But yes, in that moment. But honestly, she had the state itself had the citizens of the state had voted in cannabis and voted in hemp, and Kristi Noem vetoed it all. Went and vetoed it, so she was already.
Who was she taking money from for that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think what it really was is she was getting ready to make a play for the big stage, and so she's feeling okay with burning her bridges there in order to try and make some credentials that she can try and show up on the big stage. Because then you've seen her start making plays for bigger things up until it was like she was trying to present that whole I'm a hard ass thing, including that whole thing where she wrote in that book where she went and shot her dog and all that because it wouldn't behave. So she was trying to
she was overcompensating. She was overcompensating.
Yeah, overcompensating hard. And I can see why she thought that was a viable option, because like with the way the left has went so complete dirtbag, so complete immoral things, you know, involving kids. When you brought the kids into it, you knew there was going to be lashback. So because of that, you're seeing like the Orthodox Church having, like, people are moving away from other churches, but the Orthodox Church is having a massive rise in young people because things are too out of control. And so I understand where she thought that the hard flip would be something very desirable, and this would give her a desirable position. I seen her making that hard push, and then I seen Newsom. So Newsom's move towards center, because I think Newsom's going to be their big push after this election. I honestly believe that they put Harris up as a lamb to the slaughter, and her only purpose was to as a guilt for us. Like, look, we put up a black woman, and you racist, sexist people couldn't even.
Well, she had a huge push from the California mafia, right? Like, she had a huge push from Pelosi and the Gettys, who have backed her for a very long time. And I think that they actually thought that she would be a viable candidate.
No way.
I think part of them, like you asked Nancy Pelosi, right? She thought, yeah, viable candidate, because she's been moved along at every stage of the game, right?
Right,
she shouldn't have even been his vice president based on her showing. So somebody was smoking crack with Kamala, thinking that she was going to be the golden child, that she had all the sort of the racial and gender prerequisites, right? And at the end of the day, her inability to say anything meaningful outside of her little tiny equity script fucked her over, because she had no ballast whatsoever.
But did she have time? Did she have time? Here's two other factors.
Yeah.
And the ones affecting this huge. Did she have time to start articulating a better position?
She didn't. They didn't want to give her time.
She had the most truncated, short ability to run, where Trump, for all practical purposes, has been running for 8 years at this point.
Well, they thought, this is my feeling. First of all, they couldn't do anything besides have her, right? They couldn't say, hey, we're going to go with Newsom. No, because you have a woman and a woman of color, and I knew this all along. The only person that could leapfrog her would have been Michelle Obama. And they did not want Michelle Obama to run for president, because people would start looking at her dick, right? That would like predominate everything. So they had to go with Harris. And I think they thought that Trump has been running a marathon, right? And they thought Harris can beat him in a sprint. And I think that's what they're and we're going to limit her FaceTime. We're going to find people that ultimately she'll be able to vibe with and have conversations versus being asked tough questions. I'll tell you where they fucked up with Harris. Tim Walz. Tim Walz was the big fuck up, because don't underestimate what J.D. Vance did to Tim Walz during that debate. He did more for the Trump campaign by disassembling both Tim Walz and the women running the damn thing than Trump did really during his debate. Out of control. Yeah. What's he doing?
Cats.
Wanting more food.
So the Walz thing was like, if she had hired Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania, right? Mm-hmm. Who's like, he's not a fucking twit like Tim Walz. Tim Walz is a twit and a hollow man. Josh Shapiro probably could have gotten Pennsylvania because he's the governor, right? could have gotten Pennsylvania, might have even got more of the Jewish vote, since, problem with him is his ties with Israel and the IDF. Like, that would have been problematic. But the Waltz thing set her up for failure. And if they had had a better running mate, she might have fared a bit better, maybe a bit better. But at the end of the day, man, it didn't work, right? It didn't work. They they went chips all in on the DEI candidate, and it didn't work. America said, fuck you.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
The third thing I would say, though, why they know that she was going to be, is they were coming off an economic recession, a bad one, where every American's flat broke, and nobody gets revoted in after that. Nobody. I don't even understand how the financial or how the political analysts never brought that up. Like, we were in a horrifying recession. It's impossible. Literally, you can go look back. No president after a recession gets voted back in.
Carter got crushed. He got crushed.
Yeah. And so you look, every American's broke. They are broke. Like, this is part of how he won both popular and the electoral. So I don't, and when you look at it, when Harris actually ran for president, she only got 5th in California for popularity in the polling. Yeah. In California, she got 5th. Like, horrible candidate.
Look, dude, she was promoted every step of the way, right? She had never lost an election. That's the important thing to understand about Harris. She'd never lost it. Neither had Tim Walz, by the way. Tim Walz had never lost an election. So they get her on the primary circuit, and she gets disemboweled by Tulsi Gabbard, right? You would think, well, why should she be with Joe Biden? Yeah, disemboweled. Like, why should she be on the ticket with Joe Biden? Well, she was on the ticket with Joe Biden because they wanted her to be fucking president from the jump.
Yeah.
That's who they wanted to emerge from that primary. And we should thank our lucky stars that Tulsi Gabbard shivved her during that debate. Right?
Dude, that was so ugly. It's
one of the great moments in American politics, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But that also told you how impossible of a candidate she was. I honestly believe that they think that after this election, they could take the next one and have Newsom in for an 8-piece. And Newsom, to move towards center, has done some weird moves here. Like, that if you look at it, he promised more money last year. He promised unlimited funds for busting cannabis grows for ones that aren't state licensed and all that. Like, you didn't get that kind of action, even remotely close to that kind of action, when it was fully illegal, fully illegal. Like, they would go through, like Shasta County, where I lived before, they had a list of and they would tell you, and that on that list, depending on how much money they had for the year, would tell you how many farms they were going to bust. And it was usually 10 or less. So they would fly around with their helicopter, find the 10 ugliest farms, biggest, ugliest farms. As long as you weren't one of them, they let it go. Now there ain't no letting nothing go hardly. You've got to basically have either 6 plants, or you've got to go and pay the state, or else they are sending in maximum forces. Helicopters are coming. SWAT is coming. Heavy machinery is coming for every little Tom, Dick, and Harry up in every little mountain hole. Living where we live, we've watched I bought this land because the green rush was over. So I got it for a killer price, and it was, but we've watched, when I first moved here, I'm going to say half this mountain was still growing cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
Every year, the first year, I have a video of it on my phone. It took like 10 minutes for all the cop cars to go down the road. And nobody lives down here. And they were going down to bust the grows, and took like 10 minutes. They had armored trucks, the whole nine. And they've done that every year for 3.5 years. And now there's no cannabis up here. There's just the couple legal grows that are up here are the only ones that are growing at all.
Yeah.
Barely operating. It's wild. And
they really, like, they really fucked over Humboldt County.
Oh yeah.
Like, Humboldt County had a thriving economy, right? Thriving. And they went in and they just like fucking put it on lockdown. Right. And I knew this dude. He was a client of mine for quite a few years, and he was a grower, right? He was a grower. And, once they flipped the switch and made everything legal, he got sent a letter from the state. And the letter was, you have to return that land to exactly what it was before in 30 days.
Yeah.
Or else every day after that, you were going to get a $10,000 fine.
Per day.
Right?
Per day.
Per day. Exactly. And
I got those letters, even though I never grew up here, and I had to have it out with the state. I got those. They gave me 3 of them. They were going to charge me $30,000 per day.
Now, think of how fast you have to do a 30-day remediation program. And you have multiple acres to do this. Jeez.
And out in the mountains, nobody comes out here to do anything. Nobody. Yeah. You can't hardly hire people to come out here and do things. It's horrible. And then you have to get an engineer. You got to get permitting. The way that they did this, so the back door for them to do all that was through the EPA. So if you look at Northern California news, one of the big things that they're trying to do is they've removed a bunch of the dams up in Oregon and Northern California. And they're trying to promote the salmon to come back up and spawn in these areas again. And so, like up the Eel River, they already have done this on the Klamath River.
Yeah.
And so, one of the big problems that they're having with that is these growers went in, and a lot of these growers didn't care about the land at all. So, there's some that are real good people, but a lot of them just came in and raped and pillaged. Yeah. And when they did that, they just come in with, they'd rent bulldozers. Like I said, you can't hire people to come out here really. So they just go through and do whatever. Well, they messed up all the waterways. And when you do that, instead of having a waterway that's been worked and for years and years, now it's cutting a new waterway, which brings with it a ton of sediment. And sediment containing runoff from fertilizers and all this other stuff. So all that is part of what's keeping that population from coming back up the river. So they came in with the EPA and busted everybody for how much land they moved, for any kind of thing with a waterway. And there was actually
they got real what's the word I'm looking for? Machiavellian with the water stuff.
Oh yeah.
Very Machiavellian with the water stuff.
I watched the Senate hearing on that. Yeah. They misunderstood where they were supposed to be given purview over anything that you could take a boat down. The boat was navigable on, and they decided that applied to every tributary feeding into those, which is everything. So they were up here. Anybody that had any kind of a tiny little stream, and I promise that Northern California in the winter, everything has a tiny stream everywhere.
Yeah. That's ours.
All of it.
Yep.
All of it. Yep. And then the abatements that you were describing earlier, everybody got those abatements because I bought my land from people that were growers at one point in time. They're going through and using old satellite images to put these abatements out, even when they decided to switch to that.
It's not even yours or whoever was there before, right?
Exactly. I called the state, and I was like, what do I have to do besides not grow pot? Because I don't grow any pot. I was like, what do I have to do besides not grow pot to get you guys to quit bothering me about not growing pot? I don't understand.
Yeah, that's. Hey, so Christine says, a lot of growers are hardcore criminals. So can we like include the cartels and the Chinese in this, right? Because they are the most hardcore fucking criminals on the planet, and they've gotten involved in the weed game.
The weed game, to be honest. So when it was illegal, making it legal basically killed them.
That's right.
And there definitely is a criminal element, but honestly, most of it, absolutely not. Most of these people were just absolutely, they're not people that go and get a normal 9-to-5 job, but that doesn't mean that they're criminals. You know, but so they would rather just go out and grow some pot and live out in the woods. Most of them just wanted left alone. They weren't. Now, unfortunately, absolutely, the criminal element gets into this. Now, with that said, I promise you've basically never worked for a business that doesn't do criminal things. The people at the top are the worst criminals in the world. You couldn't get so I'm not sure who exactly isn't a criminal in the country.
Well, they've got legal criminals now. Like the legal criminals are running the game now. They turned it over to the mobs, right? Like the mobs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, me personally, I do benefit from a little adult gummy every now and then, but I think just growing, they should just let people grow, and that's it, right? Like, just let them grow, and if they want to, distill their own little fucking gummies or chocolates or whatever, let them do that, right?
Yeah. And the thing is it's such a hard subject too, because I do understand where some people like her are coming from, even with the legalization. We've seen some, and I'm definitely, despite being pro cannabis, I myself have grand mal seizures. So I promise I have more cannabis in me than basically anybody's ever met, all the time, just for me to keep my seizure level up. Like, it doesn't affect me the way that it does other people. It just doesn't. And anybody that's ever met me will verify this 100%. Like, it doesn't. I can take giant dabs of stuff that'll drop a team of Clydesdales, and it doesn't even change the way I'm talking or thinking or walking. Nothing.
Right.
Because I have a seizure problem. I have Wilson's disease. But with that said, I will 100% say that our country on a whole, because we've become such a lack of independence country, where we gave up so much of our own independence, we gave up our ability to act like adults. And to me, the ideal society, all natural drugs would be legal, such as I believe I should be able to have heroin. Not because I'm a heroin user. I absolutely am not a heroin user. But if I fall down and break my leg or something, I also don't want to have to go to we could set my leg. I take some drugs, just like I could get any of these drugs at any time. I don't do it now, but I should be able to legally have that in my medicine cabinet, because I'm a reasonable adult who knows how to not throw his life away, but also understands that there's occasions where things happen where that kind of pain relief is needed 100%. So, and I'm adult enough to understand what levels there are, even something like cocaine. Well, what if you need a tooth pulled? Well, you make a little cocaine paste, you throw it on there, boom, it's numb, you yank the tooth, you're done. Now, this is something that a reasonable adult should be able to do. But,
I think the key there is adult.
Right.
That's the key phrase, because legalization has opened up a wave of permission for young people that didn't always exist. And there were either criminal or moral penalties, right, for young people to indulge in cannabis. And for me, I my story is I started to get high around 15, right? I think late 14 is when I started to get high. And looking back in that time, I wish I had never done it, honestly, because it robbed me of a lot of ambition. My brain wasn't ready for it. Like my reasons for doing it were really negative. There was more social than it was like, right. And then it led to a lot of other, kind of drug experimentation. I'm not going to, regret doing it. I just think that it wasn't the right time for me in terms of just introducing that into my life. So I think the adult part is critical and key. And this legalization has slid that to a point where, well, if you can buy it at 18 and, in Boulder, Colorado, then why not just use it at 14, right? Or 13.
And that's the problem is we're not, as a society, a mature, responsible society. We're just not.
Yeah.
And that's a horrible thing. And I would understand that the occasional slips were going to happen with younger people, but where it's slid is into complete heavy usage. And why would you allow that? It's very similar with, you see some of these parents, like, take teenagers. Your teenager is probably going to have sex. That's how it works. That's what they're like from the time that they hit puberty up until the time that they find some other motivating factor. That is the only thing they think about. Like, it's how it works. So you as a parent, knowing that's going to happen, because no matter what you do, it's going to happen. But that's a whole shot different than saying, well, yeah, go ahead and have boys or girls up into your room and hang out alone all night and do whatever you want. And then, God, I don't understand how I got my kid got pregnant at 15. I don't understand. Like maybe you gotta curtail it. I understand those kids are going to do dumb things, and that is part of how. Like right now, there's the talk of moving the driving age up again, and like myself. Because I'm from a farm community, I've had a driver's license since I was like 13. And I could only go like 75 miles from my farm at one point in time with one of my licenses. And then I think one of them was like, and then I got another one later that was like, I could drive anywhere till like 10 o'clock or 8 o'clock or.
Right. Yeah.
I can't remember.
I know those licenses. Or you could drive like a bus or something like that.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
And because I was a farm kid. And so is what we had to drive equipment around, and farm kids were doing work. But and absolutely, I did dumb things at first. And that is where you learn to become good at things, is having done those dumb things. So I do understand that with this, the kids would still get a hold of it a little bit. Somebody got into dad's stash or his older brother's stash, whatever. I get it. But that's a whole shot different than just like people are just letting kids do it just flat out. Just, go ahead. Like, Are you kidding me? Yeah. Like your kid getting high once a month because they snuck away to a party is a whole shot different than sitting up in their bedroom every night smoking three joints while they have a developing brain chemistry. Right.
And not just any weed now. We're talking like Mankatusha Thunderfuck, right? I mean, that's I was going to ask you something. Oh. So who do you think is trying to raise the driving limit? Because if I'm an insurance company, I want all those 16-year-olds driving so I can charge all those really big fat, premiums, right? So who's behind raising the legal age to drive?
I think 90% of things are middle-class white women that have nothing better to do that push most of these things that are trying
like Mad, right? Remember Mad?
Yeah, absolutely. Those ladies, they are the ones doing it, and they're like, our kids are dying in these cars. They aren't ready to drive. Well, you know what? When I was a kid, and this is just a fact, if you take little kids, when I was a little kid, 8, 10, we were able to do more capable things than kids that I see now that are 20 that don't know how to, like if the tire went out on the truck, my uncle would go, all right, boys, go change that tire. Like, and I see 20-year-olds that don't know how to go out and change a tire.
It goes beyond that, by the way. It goes beyond that. There are 20-year-olds who don't even know, they've grown up with the internet, right? And all these game platforms and gadgets, but they don't know how to use the internet to actually find things, right? And then use those things to sequentially plan in advance.
Right.
And I love my kid. Don't get me wrong. I love my kid, but he's one of the poster kids for this, right? So he can't find his Hyundai key. It's one of those programmable keys. So he says, well, I'm just going to, wait until the Hyundai dealer opens, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I just go online, right? Really quickly. I'm like, here's 3 or 4 services. You can get that key. You can get that key delivered to you in 2 days. And there's a guy mobile who will come by and program the key for you. So you don't have to wait to go for the Hyundai dealer to open, right? It's like, I can't begin to tell you how many young people do not know how to do this, right? And it's more than just changing a tire. It's like there are other ways of doing things, and all you have to do is it's kind of a weird helplessness, or you know what I mean? Like learned helplessness.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest shit. And to watch how quickly I'm not like horribly old. I'm middle-aged as far as I'm concerned. And the world where I grew up in, every man was competent and could do basically any kind of woodworking, any kind of electrical, any kind of mechanical. Maybe they aren't going to rebuild the whole engine, but they're going to change their spark plugs. They're going to change their brakes, do things like that. To this world that we live in now, which, like you said, if it's not on an app, they know how to work an app. This is what the kids know how to do. And it's just weird to see and weird to interact with every time I go out in the world. I mean, I was looking, my wife and I were talking about this. So again, and I don't mean to keep bringing up, especially it's an older event, so it's not like I'm trying to avoid promote it, the Flattoberfest, but we spent 6 weeks out in the world, so that was a little bit, I live very isolated, so I get a little shocked. And I was at almost every kid that I saw that was under 6 was still wearing diapers. Almost every single one.
Wow.
Yep. They my oldest, she was done wearing diapers by the time she was 10 months old. And it's not like we were like beating her into it or something. She didn't this was a very easy thing. She had no problem getting out of diapers. And my other kids did not have problems like that either. And I know so many people that their kids are 4, 5, 6. I know a 7-year-old that wears diapers. And
jeez, that's nuts, man.
Insane, right? And the kid will sit there and his parents brag about how he can play video games against adults and beat adults at complicated video games. But the kid sits there and shits himself while he's doing it.
Yeah, that's like borderline autistic or something.
Yeah, it's super weird. And so then I'm standing at my one friend's house and I'm outside smoking a cigarette. And this little kid is playing with his kid and they're playing for a little bit, and the kid comes over and says something to me. And I'm like, oh, nice bike. And I thought it was kind of weird that the kid looked to be about 8 and was using training wheels still. I thought that was a bit odd. But I thought, well, I guess maybe if he just learned, okay. And so I was like, nice bike. And he's like, thanks. So I've had it for about 3 years now. And I'm like, the fuck? Why is there still training wheels on your bicycle? What the fuck? Like, let the kid fall down once.
So Brandy brings up this point: autistic children wear diapers. It's not weird to me. These are not autistic children we're talking about.
So I think most of what people are calling autism, and this is going to be an unpopular statement, is just weak, lazy ass parents. Weak, lazy ass parents.
There is some truth to what you're saying.
That like right? This little boy I'm talking about, and they call him autistic. He knows he's shitting himself. He knows. He'll ask for a diaper change after he's done playing. When he gets to a point where he's done playing, he doesn't want to stop playing his fucking game. And his parents are okay with that. His parents are fine with that. You're a girl. Girls, unlike boys, are usually extraordinarily clumsy. They won't shut up, and their vocabulary is 10 times larger than a boy's. And this is just a generality that most boys and girls follow. So when a little girl is physically not as advanced at 10, that doesn't bother me that much. This was a little boy. They are much more physically capable than girls are. I had a daughter that at 10, I swear she could still, and she's still like that. She trips over dark spots in the carpet, I think. Like, was there a shadow there that got you? Like,
the carpet monster. The carpet monster.
But this is just weak parents that refuse to make their kids do things. They don't want to watch their kids fall. They don't want to watch their kids fail. They don't want to keep their kids doing things, even though they are failing and falling. I've actually got so I was a young parent, so I've got young grandkids. I've actually got 8 grandkids now. And my oldest grandson and I spent a ton of time together. I'm real close with my oldest daughter, and she was young when she had him, so she dropped him off with me every Friday night, and he spent Friday night through Sunday afternoon with me. They do hand out autistic diagnoses like candy, and most of it is just kids that I agree. And most of it is just kids that haven't been taught to take care of themselves, which was something you have to teach kids. It's a thing. And then parents don't want to take the time to teach their kids. Like I've got animals that are better trained than most people have their children. And they're so worried about their expression and blah, blah, blah. Well, if his expression is shitting himself and then making you wipe it up later, you should maybe curtail that expression, because it's not going to work out for him in the world.
So I think there's a lot of like weird sort of social and peer pressure with these parents. Like there's like they have codependent relationships with other parents. Yeah. And so it's kind of like one parent will say, well, so-and-so has this or that, or, and they go, oh, wow. Yeah. Well, our so-and-so has this and that. And I've seen this, like, there's this weird kind of codependence amongst the parents. Yeah. And then they support the codependence with their children because they bond through this codependent relationship. So who's that black beauty right there?
This is Spookums. He's my partner occasionally on debates. It was hilarious. Oh, nice. What's yours name?
This is Peachy.
Oh, nice.
They see each other.
Nice. Peachy's is pretty.
Peachy, yeah, she's our little runaway cat.
That's my granddaughter's name is Princess Peach, so she always goes by Peachy.
So she came into our life in such a weird way, man. Like one day she just showed up, like cats do. She just showed up in the back, little backyard area because, we would feed birds with the bird feeder. And so the feed would go on the ground. And so she was stalking these birds because she was hungry. Right. And so eventually we took her in. And then one day she got out, and I'm looking around, and there was this woman who lives in the barn-dominium community behind me. So I went in there, and she was a big cat adopter, right? So that was her thing. Her name was Bobby. And I'm walking down the street, and then she comes out of her barn-dominium, and I said, "Hey, Bobby, have you seen that little cat?" Because she knew who the little cat was. Have you seen that little cat? It got out. He says, "Oh, that cat. Yeah. You know how that cat got here?" I said, "No." She said, my husband went to Walmart to get something. I think some spark plugs for the car so he could change the plugs. And when he came back from Walmart, he opened the hood of the car and that cat jumped out. So this little cat that was on my lap somehow got up into the engine
And
of this guy's rig and lived through it to get to where they were, pops the hood, and then, shoots out and eventually winds up in my backyard. She jumped to ride in the fucking engine bay of that guy's car.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's crazy. That's usually bad news. I actually, because we got a lot of barn cats. And as you can see, it's super cold and nasty today, so they don't think they're barn cats today. But
they're hanging out with you.
Yeah, being nuisances. But normally I honk my horn 3 times before I even try and start my vehicle. And then I've got a diesel, so after honking the horn, I got to turn on my glow plugs and let it sit there, so it gives them a minute. Like, anybody up in there, get out.
Right. Fair warning. That's your fair warning.
Yeah.
So let's talk about holidays at the Baldersons. What's it like to celebrate a little Saturnalia around the Baldersons?
We didn't do well. My wife made a real nice so she's from California and I'm from the Midwest, and so where we're from, like, one of my favorite desserts is Kuchen, because I'm very German, and most people have no idea what Kuchen even is, and it's a custard pie basically with different fruits in it a lot of times, and so we like pudding. We're pudding people. So last night the wife made us a nice pudding cake. So that was mostly what we did yesterday. It was nasty and cold like it was today. We usually do a real bigger deal for Yule though, and have a good time for Yule. That one's
what does that look like? What are the traditions around the Balderson household?
We usually do a fire out there. And then if I'm going to drink mead, that is the time that we drink mead. Yule's a real big day for us because it has a lot of its more traditional. Stop it, Spook. It has a lot more traditional meaning with it for us also, because where I live in my property, like right now, it's almost noon. And I wish I had enough cord to turn it around, but I could show you where on my trees, because I've got trees that are like 120 feet tall or something. And so the sun will only come up so high and it'll drop down. I can see where the sun is hitting on this tree, but it never touches my property. And throughout the winter, that line goes higher and higher. So up until Yule, that line will keep moving up, just ever so small, but it'll keep moving up. And where the tree will actually get light from the sun hitting it will go get smaller and smaller up until that point. And then all of a sudden you start seeing it go back down. And we almost again have a celebration like the day that every year, the day that the sun finally gets high enough up where we are to where it hits our chicken coop on the ground, that it's like, oh, the sun is back. Oh.
Right. Yeah. So you celebrate that. So you make a little mead, and do the puddings come out at Yule as well?
Oh yes. Yule, we usually do a pretty good feast, and I'm a vegetarian. My wife isn't. So she will do more of the meats and whatnot. For me, it's usually like, she'll make some real nice mashed potatoes and gravy, mushroom gravy.
So is that Christine in the background? Is her name Christine?
Oh yeah.
Yep. Bring her on here for a moment. Let's say hi to her.
Everyone say hi, baby. That we pick wild chanterelles. Yeah. And then my wife makes a chanterelle and hedgehog mushroom gravy. That's basically like white gravy, like you put on biscuits and gravy. Oh my God!
There she is. Hi, Christine.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
And we kept hearing in the background. Good to see you.
It's Mama.
Uh-oh. Rumble in the jungle.
Yeah. Here, can I turn that?
Somebody besides me talks. They're all like,
Guys, hey,
stop!
There you go. The voice of God. The voice of God. Yeah. Well, Christine, thank you for taking care of our guy there.
Yeah, he's worth it.
She's the best. She is. She's a lot of, like, I live a very traditional life. This is part of why I align more with the conservative side, even though I'm not a particularly political person. I'm, I tend to live, because I live a very, very traditional life where, like, I understand it gets a little weirder when you live in the city, but for like myself, my wife doesn't come out. She doesn't shovel the cow pen. She doesn't take care of the cows. She doesn't haul hay bales. She doesn't scoop the driveway. She doesn't fix the vehicles. She doesn't cut trees. None of those things. And I don't clean the house. I don't do the laundry. I don't cook the food. I come in and she serves me, and I go outside and I serve her. Like, because all those things that I do outside build her, provide for her and build her world.
It's not an arbitrary sharing of duties, right? Like, this is where things got really tangled up in like domestic life. Like, you have your duties and they're your duties, and that's what you're good at, and that's what she's good at, right? Where the arbitrary sharing of duties really came into focus is like telling men to do things that they're just not really good at.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, well, we have to have this fair and balanced kind of thing going on in our household. And it's like, no, I'm really not the best person to be doing those things.
Well,
right.
And if I can interject, it puts women in a position to do things we're not particularly good at either. And
there you go.
It wasn't until I met him that I realized how emotional my decision making is. I want everybody to feel good. I want everybody to be happy. I want everybody to get what they want, but that's not reality. He's going to look at reality and take steps to make sure that the best possible outcome happens. And it's not always going to be perfect and wonderful and happy for everybody, but he's going to go out and he's going to do the hard things so that I can live a pretty nice life and make this home comfortable and peaceful for the rest of us when we're all in it. And that's what I enjoy. That's what I'm good at. I'm not good at chopping down trees. It hurts me if I go out and I chop wood. It damages my body, and he doesn't want to see that.
Yep. And I thank you for sharing that, because that's not the arbitrary division of labor. It's like you have a very tacit understanding about where your strengths are and where they're not. And so you just align with them in the household, and everybody gets along better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Exactly. And I do understand in the city this gets weird because where guys have outsourced all their jobs. So now that you aren't fixing your car, you aren't you're spending 2 minutes mowing your lawn, and you're doing it crosshatch and all this stuff because you're such a bored it's I do understand that the labors that are happening in their home that are getting outsourced. Guys aren't doing their own electrical or their own plumbing, none of those things. So I understand it kind of moved the Overton window, but I also don't think that's a good thing. Like, you guys need to start taking your positions back. There's a reason that, like, for me, I'm a big believer. I don't believe in women voting, and I don't believe in weak men voting. I believe that there should be standards.
I'm in your camp, man. I'm in, like, I did a show about this the other day, and I said, I'm not into, like, Chuck Schumer types fucking voting, because they're weak, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's very controversial, but a lot of these issues they're either voted on or acted upon emotionally.
100%.
Right? And you got to take the emotion out of it.
Yeah.
So, and again, I love women, and, so many great women in my life and in this chat. Women are emotional. They're more emotional than men are. It's just the way it is.
They're supposed to be.
They're supposed to be.
It's a So there's two different mindsets. When something happens, my first mindset is to fix it. It's the first thing I'll go to.
Me too. I go there too.
Because we're guys. Right. Women, their first mindset is everybody okay? How does everybody feel? Let's get all this under control. That's their first mindset. And both things need to happen. Like on this, like say Christy and I had a bunch of little kids. If something happens on the farm, both the problem need fixed and they need calmed down and put on the same page.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful system. And there's a reason that my brain works a certain way and hers does. Now, the problem is we've tried to make people the same, where my wife is absolutely respected in everything that she wants and has. I absolutely take into account. But when it comes down to decision making, her first thing is well, how would everybody feel about it? And then she starts looking at options and how everybody would feel about the options, and then yada yada, and she keeps moving through that, and she eventually it's like, well, the problem just needs solved. Just you know what, we would all feel a lot less about this problem if it wasn't a problem anymore. Like, let's feel about it later. And so the problem's not actually getting fixed. When she was talking about the hard things, so like as a rancher, like just recently I had a goat, and this goat had gotten caught up in some not fencing, but in an old gate, and it tried to buck itself out, and it tore the whole hell out of its leg. And we tried to save it. And unfortunately in California, it's very limited what you're allowed to get as far as supplies, because they've tried to make everything where you got to take everything to a vet. And then like where I live, there is no vet. The vet retired and nobody took his spot. So now he rents it out to a family, and it's somebody's house. Is the vet clinic is somebody's house now. So there is no vet to even take him to. Well, when we couldn't get it under control, because it was already a problem when we found her, and I could smell that it had taken to the rot, and I could smell the death on her leg, and I knew that and she had started hiding, and I'd had to go find her, and she was, because even though we had put medicine on it and wrapped it up, she went and hid inside the chicken coop, away from the light and away from the other goats, and when I opened the door, I could smell the death. Well, Christy most likely would have kept trying to save it. I went out and I put it down. And it sucked. I cried about it. I'm a vegetarian. Like, I cried about it later. I ain't even gonna lie. But in that moment, I can either let this goat suffer horribly, or I can do what I need to do and take care of it. The goat's dying either way. That's just how it is. And if it's something and I understand in the community, there's arguments about infectious diseases and whether things can be passed along to other things. But as a farmer, that argument doesn't exist. And right. You don't put sick animals in with your herd. And if that animal can't come back, you've got to have where it seems like you're being heartless and mean to this one animal, isolating it and taking it away, and then even possibly putting it down. What it's doing is saving the rest of the herd, which also would have had to suffer that same fate. Now you've got animals that that probably would never have gotten this or been exposed to it, and now it's a problem, and you're now making other animals sick and die. That it's not their fault either. Like, I understand, right. It's not this animal's fault. I'm not trying to, but it's not theirs either. Yeah. And these are super hard choices. Super hard. There's not a good. At the end of it, there's not a good feeling to be had. And that's leadership, and that's being a man. And somebody's got to fucking do that. Like,
some people have to make the hard choices. And look, let me see. Juliana brought something up here. And this is an interesting point of discussion. She says some women are opposite. They fix before emoting. Now, Sure.
There's always outliers.
There's always outliers. Absolutely. Always outliers. And some of it can be learned behavior too.
Yeah.
Right. Like, because of certain circumstances, if you're on a farm or whatever, you're going to have to do some of those things. Or, even if you're not on a farm and you're like in a single parent household, you're probably going to have to take on some of those responsibilities and fix shit. Right. So, yeah, I agree with that.
So
Before we
back
get
to the
go ahead.
Back to the voting thing, this is part of what set that apart, because as she just said, there definitely are some women, there are outliers, there are also men that emote before they think, and those are the men I would excise out of the voting systems. And we used to have a system where our school system, because schools are horribly liberal, has tried to teach that our founding fathers and the people that started this country were all these wealthy landowners. But the fact is most of them were running away and had nothing. And there was indentured servants that came over here and then got land afterwards. There was nobody to buy the land from. If you wanted land, you said, this land over here is mine, and you went and worked it. Now, what that was then, if you were the person with enough gumption, foresight, and knowledge and ability to run your own land, and you also are a person that lives in this town who's also going to apply that foresight to, I also want this town to prosper, then absolutely you should have a vote. But if you are not even capable of taking care of yourself, why should you be given a vote in how things are going to be done? And then further, if you don't own land in this area, why should you be given a vote on that land? Because you're just temporary. You're a transient. There's
no skin in the game.
No skin in the game. So of course your vote is going to be more hedonistic than somebody that is going to that's going to plan on putting roots down here. Because and if I have kids and grandkids, I don't want to see this town fail and turn into a dump in 50 years. If you're a transient that has no roots down in that, what do you care? You want to get the most out of it for you. So you're going to put a very hedonist approach to it.
You know what we call those people, Ben? Rootless cosmopolitans.
Yeah.
That's who we call those people.
Yeah. And they shouldn't. No, I don't think those people should be allowed to vote, period. And I do agree, but I do agree with there are some women that their thinking is different, but for all practical purposes, most women think very emotionally. And I am not even criticizing it when I say it. When I come home after making a hard decision, my wife's very emotional thinking and what's going to make me feel better and understanding all the things I'm going through. I appreciate that very much. So,
Yeah. All right. We just solved the problems of the world there. Hey, so I have a question for you. And this is more along the lines of like what you're experiencing, like real time right now, Ben Balderson Interverse, right? I've had so many, like, not just crazy syncs, because they're starting to get off the charts here, but even like moments, like telepathic or precog moments. So the other day, I was driving on a highway from Kerrville to Fredericksburg, and I was in the fast lane. It's a 2-lane highway, right? Going each direction. And I was in the fast lane, and all of a sudden I heard this voice in my head. It wasn't even a voice, it was more like a prompt. Hey, you need to move over to the slow lane, right? So I moved over to the slow lane, and within 10 seconds, there was a car who was trying to pass all these other cars coming in the other direction, that he was barreling down the fucking fast lane that I had just moved out of. He passes me on my left within 10 seconds before I said, I got to move over. Right. And I feel like these things are starting to dial up now. Right. Like, are you having any kind of connection with this kind of phenomena?
So, straight up, anybody that's ever met me, I'm a pretty roughneck guy, and I really am. And I am scared of almost nothing. I will walk right into the teeth of any storm. It's just the way I am. And I'm fairly confident in my skills to get through most anything. I'll be all right. Well, my wife and I are, so the Weaving Spiders webs that were you normally on Saturdays, Marcus Allen from that is meeting us, and Billingtano and some other friends, and we're all going to go to Flattoberfest. And so they're coming up from the north and we're coming up from the south, and we're going to meet in Nashville, Tennessee, which is pretty awesome. Never seen Nashville, Tennessee, and I was kind of looking forward to that. You know, a couple cool things to see there. We wake up in Memphis and overnight, and I look at this hurricane, and I'm like, I really don't like that. I said, and my wife's like, what? I was like, I think we need to go. And we literally drove 3 states out of our way and headed south into Mississippi, and went clear down into Mississippi. And went
so you avoided the
entire thing. And
oh, wow.
Yeah. And so the road that we were on, Marcus and them didn't avoid it. They literally got trapped on that road. I-40. They were trapped as the road was collapsing in front of them. Marcus Allen has videos of it, you know, like his own video of it. Like, oh my God, like the road is just eroding and turning into this wild raging river. And there's miles of semis trapped behind them. So they got nowhere to go. So Marcus Allen and Billingtano and Lee Thunder Chicken and some of those guys, they look over and they see that some of these medians aren't cement, but they're metal. And so they walk over and they're looking at them, and Marcus brushes it off, and there's instructions on how to take this thing apart. And so there's Marcus right there. And it's a caravan of three cars. See, they had multiple cars and everything. So they took apart this median and kicked the freaking thing apart. And then they freed everybody. Like there was other videos going around of other people behind them, like videoing them, like, oh my God, these guys saved us. Like the road was just eating toward them. I literally, and this is something, like I said, I would never do. And the whole trip was like that. And it's been like that, like you said, since, like, where I'm just like, I normally would have drove into the storm, especially going to meet my boy Marcus, and him and I are, you know, we've already predestined to do this, and we've been waiting for a year to do it, damn near. I ain't gonna miss that. I don't care about some stupid storm. And I said, you know what, going through Mississippi and Louisiana and all those states that's the way to do this. And I got to the event a day and a half before them, and they were like almost there.
Right yeah. So I just feel like there's an uptick now, and it feels very, very Aquarian to me. Like we're like starting to like connect sort of on these interesting nodes that aren't like related to the internet, or it's like a whole different network, both kind of collectively and individually, and the sharing of information, which is non-local. I feel like that there's a lot more of this happening. Before you get into this, I just want to address something in chat, because Nevad, I'm the one who put you in a timeout. And the reason I put you in a timeout was because you came in late, which is fine. You can come in late. I don't care. But then you started to talk a little bit of shit, I thought, about Ben. So I put you in a little bit of a timeout there, not to punish you, just to slow your roll a little bit. That's it. You're always welcome here. So I'm just giving you the reason why you got put into a timeout. And you're back, and thank you for being here. Go ahead, Ben.
I think that we're coming to a time where like the zeitgeist, we're more connected to the zeitgeist than typical.
Yes.
And so I think ideas that are able to transition and flow, that, you know, because this is something that's happened, you know, it's the 100 Monkeys effect, the zeitgeist.
I think you just said, I just brought this thing up with Nevad about the timeout, and then he says, come on, mods, fess up. Why did I get silenced? See, like this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like I was out ahead of that thought just in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're closer, like the veil is closer on that. Because I feel like and I've been saying this for a number of years, I feel like we are close to the time of gods and monsters. And I think we have, you know, if you look at all the stories, the monsters always came first. And then the gods were the ones that came to fight the monsters.
Right.
And we're absolutely seeing where these monsters are growing huge. They're but with that, eventually we're going to see people that are going to start rising up, and that's going to come out of this it's going to come with the zeitgeist at the same time, where so many people are starting to understand things and know things and be on the same page, which is part of what also makes me wonder if that's part of like when they did when they did the fracturing, you know, of information to try and keep people out of the same page. But there's no stopping the transfer of it through the ether, where, you know, it's not hooked up to the machines.
This is the thing that people, again, when you get into the polarization, right? Like this is going to happen. We're going to wind up in a technocratic, feudal gulag, 24-hour surveillance and pre-crime, and you know, and it's like, yeah, they'll try, but at the end of the day, man, there's this whole other reality that is interpenetrating our reality, and we become so like didactic, and you know, it's so weird. It's like we've overdeveloped one part of our brain now.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean?
The unfortunate part of it is that because of all that, we've become very ungrounded. We don't actually live out. All right, you guys, you're being ridiculous. Stop. We don't actually live out the things that we're talking about. And unfortunately, in the there's one right behind you. Yeah, you guys need to stop. You need to stop too.
He goes, all right, I'm out of here.
The unfortunate part, and I talk about this in my older alchemy talks especially, is where you have three minds. Well, people have moved up to where they're just looking at this, what I call in those talks, the engineer mind. And the engineer mind is brilliant. It really is. It figures out new things, new ways to do things. Unfortunately, the engineer mind is completely ungrounded. So there's often that and I say this because I worked construction, so it's a very easy thing to understand in the way people work, where the guy out in the field, then there's occasions, and I can name one. We had when recessed can lights first came out, those lights that fit up into the ceiling and don't stick out at all. When those first came out, the only recessed can light made was this one that was they were meant to go in ceilings. Well, this engineer designed this building, and the front of it had this nice archway, and the archway was kind of a faux thing. There was nothing really above it. It was just a tin sheet, and he had these beautiful recessed lights in there. And when you'd walk under it, it would, have these nice lights that were recessed and everything. But above it, there was nothing to cover the recessed light can, which we're not, as an electrician, there's a thing called NEMA 1 or NEMA 3. NEMA 1 means it can't go outside. It can't be exposed to elements. It needs to be protected from elements. NEMA 3 means that it's got at least some elemental protection. And then there's other ones where it can start being protected from like vapors and, if you're in a lab or whatever, but your typical indoor, outdoor. And so NEMA 3. So these items would have to be NEMA 3. And I'm sorry, the cat's distracted me. I forgot where I was going here.
That's what they're there to do. They're living their purpose.
Yes. And to eat the vast army of rats. We had so many rats. I had a different black cat that died, and she was the friendliest cat, and we didn't even realize what a murderess she was. And after she died, all of a sudden there was an army of rats. Like Brian and I picked up this box one day, and we live on a farm. Like a rat doesn't bother us. After like 10 jumped out the box, we're both kind of looking, and then like 15 jumped out the box, and we just both dropped it and walked away. Like there's like an army of rats swirling around. We just both walked away like, nope, not dealing with that. And they ate the PVC pipes out of my walls and ate a bunch of my wiring and all that. And so, yeah, we had to go arm up back up with the cats.
Yeah, you gotta arm up. So you got the engineering mind, which is one mind. What are the other two minds?
So then the other two minds are your parts house, which is your salt mind, and that's very static. Like, so the engineer needs to check in with that parts house and go, hey, what do I have available here to work with? Because I can only have such a grandiose plan, but if I only have this to work with, it doesn't work out. And then the third mind is the contractor, and that's your ego, and that's the person actually living this out on this plane. And so the three minds need to work in conjunction, or else the thing doesn't happen, because the thing doesn't happen at all. And again, as the guy that's doing the work, hey, that can light looks great, but it's a NEMA 1 thing, so the rain is falling directly on it because it's not enclosed, and now it's going to short out and cause an electrical short and possibly burn down the building, and at the very least it'll quit functioning. Like, you've got to understand this, engineer. Like, it's how it works. The parts house says I don't have one that's waterproof, so you can't put it in a watery area.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense. Total sense.
Yeah. So so we as a society, while I think it's helped us with the zeitgeist, we're also stuck in this engineer mind where everybody knows everything, but almost nobody can actually do anything.
Well, that is so true, right? Everybody's a fucking expert now, right? I have the truth. Right? You don't have the truth, which means that you're an inferior person, right? And we've banked all this currency in the so-called truth. And the truth of the matter is that it's, for most people, trying to pack it in within a Twitter post or a Facebook post is just incredibly limiting in general, right? Yes. I mean, just think about that too, how Twitter within, 58 characters, unless you have a blue check, shapes your mind, right? I don't have a problem with I don't need to like jump up to the next level, because I like to, kind of chisel my thoughts and get it within that. But within that frame set, there's a much greater chance that you'll wind up in polarity, because you don't have enough space to bring nuance into the conversation. Right?
Yes.
And this is what's happened. A lot of social engineering.
100%. You hit that nail on the head, because most of these things require a nuanced opinion. Yes. Just like what we were talking about earlier. If I just said, women, I don't think women should vote. Well, that sounds horrible. Like, that's a real easy thing to start bashing on and turn into a negative thing. But then if you throw all the nuance of it, like when I had the debate on that, actually in the chat, it was 90% women. And they're all like, yeah, that sounds good to me. Like, let's do this. So where are you signing me up? Like, because they didn't, and it's only with the nuance. So if something is a complicated issue, and geopolitics is super complicated, it requires, like I like the way the heathens used to do it. The heathens, it was an entire, event that you were at for days and days. And if you and I were to discuss a proposal between each other, the first thing we would do is get drunk and fucked up together and discuss it. Right. And then the next day we would discuss it again without doing that.
Right.
And so what we've done now is we've said as in our drunken, fearless state where we'll say all the dumb things and air all the little things worming around in our brain.
Right.
We'll say them all. And then the next day we'll go ahead and work through that with a clearer mind and come to a honest agreement with each other about it.
I like that. I like that process. Yeah. You'll say some really stupid shit. Right. And then you'll come back the next day and go, that was a really stupid thing. But there was something there. There was a kernel of truth in that stupid thing. Right. Yep. Let's just slice off the rest and focus on that little kernel of truth.
Exactly. So now we can reasonably address these things that are gonna, when you're drunk, saying bombastic things is expected. When you're sober, it's not. And that's when you get into real fights about it, because now real feelings are hurt. All right, turd. And
this is just their show, and we're in it. You know what I mean?
The Spookums, one of my debates, I didn't even realize it because half the time, I don't even notice the cats because they're just there. And it's just part of my life. And so Spookums, every time that this guy would talk and I would get done talking and he would start debating back at me, Spookums, I guess, was charging forward, doing that like that. And he was going, So then as I'm getting ready for the next debate, the guy goes, yeah, I'll debate him, but I'm not debating the cat.
The cat's going to win every time.
Yes, I got nothing.
That's so funny. So, hey, man, where are you doing those debates? What channel? Is that on your YouTube channel or is that a different channel?
We started our own new YouTube channel from a rando IP address to try and get out from under some thumbs.
Yeah.
And
how do people find it? How do they find this?
Deliberating Dogface Dudes.
Okay. Deliberating Dogface Dudes.
So we're trying to follow TOS and we're trying to not be naughty boys and see if we can get into some more mainstream talks, and some things which they're still important to life. Yes, it's not the truth or world stuff, but it's important life stuff. And, at some point in time, like Robert was talking about earlier, we get tired. Like the week that when I came out with my, my world cosmology that I've developed, that I've tried to figure out, it was one of the biggest shows I ever had. My crow show was giant. I got like 100 invites to other shows and whatnot from it. I got negative 50 views or negative 50 subs that week from YouTube. By the time it totaled out, I got like negative 50. People were hitting me up every day and the shows all did super well and YouTube just bombed me for it. And so we're trying to, and then I understand I was on that first big video that went viral that was anti COVID response, whatnot. That Ike reposted and all that, and the one with Kaufman in it and everything, and I was in it, and I understand, but we're trying to not do that, so we restarted entirely. So yeah, Deliberating Dogface Dudes, and hopefully we can.
You've got some subscribers here. They've just clicked in and said, "I'm sub now."
I appreciate it. Greatly appreciated.
A few open minds along the way, which is awesome. Real quick, because I know you were connected to Owen, and then had a bit of a falling out. Like, where are you with the Big Bear these days, and what's happening in that world?
Yeah, I've actually for some reason been getting stuff. So apparently he's getting sued by a bunch of people.
That doesn't surprise me,
because he had for quite a while went on about they were going to buy land up in Idaho up there, and they were going to start a Bertaria, and anybody that and don't quote me on this part because I can't go back because I wasn't a Bertaria follower. Owen and I would talk on the phone about alpacas and farming and things like that, and you know, the things going on in the world. I didn't like follow his show, so I don't know. So I can't quote that, but from the way I understand it, he was telling everybody, and I believe he did. I think I heard him say it, that if you paid $400, you basically had, you know, you could go up there, you know, and use it as a vacation spot.
You could have access to it.
You have access, unlimited access. And he offered all these things. Well, then he takes in all these donations, buys the land, and then now people can't go up there, yada yada. So then he goes and redoes it with another piece of property and gets a whole bunch of donations again. So they feel like he swindled them on that first piece of property, which he still owns free and clear in his name, because everything, you know, and it was done through donations. So they feel they got swindled, so they're suing him. For me personally, when he started calling like Jim Bob and James from Grounded Extracts and Woodshop Bear and all those guys.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that was like a major blowout. We talked about that.
Yeah.
After the fact, and that was when you had the falling out. So my I guess my question is like, did you guys ever patch that up, or do you just kind of move on from
his response to me calling him out? And I thought my call out was fair. It was rough, but it was fair, because his behavior was real bad. And for me as a man, when your friends act like that, you don't quit being their friend, but you call them out on it. But then at that point, they have to make a choice. So his choice was to try and paint me as, I think, a meth user. I have which is hilarious because I have Wilson's disease and I have grand mal seizures, so I can't even drink coffee. It'll give me a seizure. I much less do something like that. Like it would. So it's hilarious. Said that my beard. He tried disparaging my beard as if I'm like that kind of
sin. That's a sin.
Yeah,
crossing the line there.
Exactly. Said that it was a merkin from like my mom's vaginal hairs or something, and then tried calling my mom a whore and all this. My mom's actually a Baptist pastor. So whatever, you know, but you know, none of it had any, you know, I'm not one of those, I don't got thin skin, you know, maybe if you were hitting something close to a mark somewhere, but he had nothing to hit. But either way, shit talking and more shit talking. So his response was, well, I'm going to drag you into a shit talking contest, which is what he likes to do with people. And I was like, so I just quit talking to him. I have nothing to do with it, because that's what a man does. If you're going to act like that, I don't want to associate with you no more. So I don't. Same thing like when James True went off his rocker and then had like a complete mental breakdown online afterwards. Like I just quit talking. I didn't sit there and talk bad. I didn't tell everybody all the dirty secrets. I just quit talking to him and just left it, like, you know, because I don't care, you know. And honestly,
here's the thing, right? Men generally have a naturally antagonistic relationship with each other in general, right? We just do. We look at another guy, we say that's competition, right? Yep. And then we kind of work through that and we figure out, okay, we can work together, or, you know, he's an asshole or whatever. But by and large, we usually like work it out. But what I've seen in the so-called truth community is that antagonistic attitude gets taken too far, and it becomes really deleterious to any of us getting together and doing anything positive.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, you know, you got to figure out that not everybody is your enemy, just because they may not have the same sort of worldview that you do to the maximum degree doesn't make them the other. Yep. Right? Like you got to find that place where you can connect with these people, and maybe there are some people you just can't connect with, and that's just the way it is, right? Like that happens all the time. But I just find that there's such at times this antagonistic and antipathy that goes on in the so-called truth world or the so-called like patriot world. And it's like, no wonder we can't fucking get it together.
Well,
right?
It's because it's all feminized.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah. If we were able to go behind the woodshed we would come out friends.
Yeah.
And that's because that's the way men work. But women said, oh, but they're uncomfortable with that. So they would rather do. And if you look at it, so especially with younger people, and of course, you always have to put this. There are outliers. There are women that don't do this and men that do. Yes, right. I understand. Yes. Generally, when you look at it, especially you can look at high school where it stands out more, where it's groupy, but this continues on throughout life. Two men have an issue with each other. They go out to the football field. They go out to the light tower. They duke it out. It honestly doesn't even matter who wins. There's some mechanism inside men that's like, well, now we're friends. We now respect each other. You know, we're not gonna treat each other overly horribly because the other guy might feel free to hit me in the mouth, and I didn't like it when he hit me in the mouth last time. So cool, we're gonna be cool with each other. Where women typically then they're gonna go get their group of friends. And they're going to girl power, and they're going to make sure that they tell everybody rumors about you, and they're going to destroy you in your reputation. And they're going to try and make everybody hate you and feel about you the way that they feel. And so this has, now that we've moved into this world where men aren't allowed to act like men, where the whole world's entirely feminized, this isn't working out for dudes. So we don't get that resolution that we used to have that is literally built into us, where if you and I just went, not you and I, we don't have problems, but the two people antagonizing each other, if they actually just went out behind a woodshed, they'd come out best friends in 10 minutes, and they'd be ready to throw down with you if you were being antagonistic to the guy he was just calling a shithead.
Let's see. AM says, I don't agree on women thesis anecdotal proof of opposite. It depends upon your mother, intelligence, and education. Well, we kind of covered that a little bit before that comment. We talked about, there are always outliers. There are people who have raised in certain environments. There's epigenetic reasons why people develop along certain lines. But we're talking fundamental. We're talking fundamental, like dialectic, male-female. Right? AC/DC, different. There's different wiring.
Most people are one way.
But we also took that into consideration as well. Right? So
it's the weirdest shit to me when anybody discusses these things, all of a sudden pattern recognition, like the truth community is like pattern recognition, and then as soon as you say something that says outlier, but there's other cases, like, oh my God.
Well, so again, it's all context, right? Like I could go back through this chat and, AM, and by the way, AM shows up a lot, and thank you for being here, right? But AM is not part of the earlier part of the chat, right? Coming in late and not understanding the ground that we've covered already.
Yeah.
Like we've already talked about these things, and so a lot of this also has to do with context, right? There's a big contextual piece. You come in late in the conversation, you're just hearing part of the conversation. You didn't hear what we were talking about 30 minutes ago, right? So all these things have to be taken into account. And it's a Mercury retrograde. So I love how we're going back into the conversation, right? And pulling things out that we've already talked about to kind of reinforce the points that we're bringing in to the conversation in the present. So thank you, AM, for doing that.
You betcha.
Yeah. All right, Ben, you're a busy man. You got work to do. I'm gonna have to let you go at some point. So
yes, sir. Yeah,
Brian
go jiggy this morning. So
yeah, it was great. It was great, man. So again, just to bring this back into this like idea of the moment and communication, how we hooked the show was I was thinking about you. I said, I gotta get Ben Balderson back on the show one of these days. And then you show up on Twitter, and then you come into my mentions, like my DMs, right? And like there you are. I'm like, fuck, let's hook this up, man. And we put the date on for today. That's exactly how it happened, right?
It's funny because I had actually watched you not too long ago, and because the Pluto moving into prominence, and this actually for me made a pretty, I was like, wow, that's a big deal, and it really explains a lot of what's going on. And then I I had just started on Twitter because of this debate show, because a lot of the bigger debaters are on Twitter. And then I seen you making a comment and I was like, Robert, I was just thinking about you. So this is all hilarious.
This is good, man. We brought it full circle. All right. So we'll get you back on in the springtime. Things thaw out a little bit. We'll get a fresh perspective from you. In the meantime, get warm, go do your day. Love you, brother. Thank you for being on the show. And we got the links hooked up, and people can subscribe to the new channel, Deliberating. It's awesome. So thanks again, Ben.
Thanks, brother. Love you, man.
All right, you take care. There is the great Ben Balderson, and we'll have him back on here in the springtime. In the meantime, I got to tell you about Sunday night show. You're not going to want to miss Sunday night show. It's going to be me, David Palmer, and Evan Baker. And we are going to have an epic astrological forecast for you on Sunday night. Right here, 7 p.m. on this channel. I'm going to give you a bit of a heads up about what we're talking about. We're going to start with all the aspects that are lining up about war. All right, but we're not going to end there. So we're going to take you through it. We're going to walk you through it. We are literally going to hit escape velocity and take you into the cosmos by the end of Sunday night show. So be a part of it. It's going to be great. It's going to be an epic show. So Sunday night, 7 p.m., the astrological warcast with me, David Palmer, Evan Baker, two of my favorite astrologers and people. We're gonna completely melt this thing. It'll be so good. All right. Thank you everyone for being here today and enjoying the view from the free state of Jefferson with our good friend Ben the Heathen Balderson. And until then, take care of each other, treat each other well. God bless, and bye for now. Oh, locals, you got some gifts coming today, some treats coming. All right, take care. Bye for now.